Hey campers, so I'm out here on the top of a mountain in Algoma, Northern Ontario, Canada. I'm here without shelter and without a sleeping bag, and I've got to stay here overnight, so I've got to try to stay warm and stay dry until the morning. Stick with me. I've got about 2 hours of daylight left. First, find a place to build the shelter, then make a plan for the shelter, then gather some firewood. By that time, it'll probably be pretty close to dark, and then it's just time to hunker down and relax. I'm in an area of mixed forest, so I've got some softwood trees and some hardwood trees. I'm hoping to find plenty of hardwood standing dead, like maples and oaks, that I could burn and keep coals, which will keep me warm all night. And I'm hoping to get some sleep. So I don't have a sleeping pad or anything like that, so I'm going to need to make some bedding out of balsam fir if I can find it, or cedar, or some boughs. If you follow the channel, you'll know Cher and I were at our cabin and it was minus 25.
It's so cold!
Just last week, but oh, what a difference 7 days make. It's about freezing, 0 degrees Celsius, 32 Fahrenheit here in where I'm at in Algoma, Northern Ontario. So task number one is finding a shelter, or finding a place for a shelter. So I'd like to have at least one good rock wall that's going to sort of reflect heat and give me a place with a constant temperature and shelter me from the potential winds. I don't want to be right out on the edge of the mountain or hill. I want to kind of be tucked in somewhere. Just up here might be a good spot. You can see it's kind of sheltered. It's got a nice rock wall. I can sort of dig out the snow. I can lean some trees against the top of the rock and make sort of a lean-to shelter here. This might be a good spot. I'm going to keep looking, but we may have found it. And I'm already seeing some great standing dead hardwood. So I'm looking at another potential spot, and I've got a bald eagle, a juvenile bald eagle, that's coming to check me out to make sure I'm okay and not messing anything up. I actually think we're going to go with this spot here. It's got a nice cozy little corner. One thing I don't love about it is this tree, but I'm just going to take a couple of the bottom limbs off. So I'm mostly just going to build a snow shelter around here using my snowshoes as a shovel. So one thing I have to be really conscious of, well, because of the warmth, but mostly just because when you work hard, you tend to sweat, you tend to work up the heat. So I've got to be really conscious of not overheating and not starting to sweat. Because if you're even in, this near freezing temperature, where it's not that cold, it's kind of dangerous to be wet overnight for sure. So I want to So far this year in our area, we've gotten over 370 centimeters, which is more than 12 feet of snowfall so far this winter. And again, it's February 23rd, I think. So there's still more to come, but lake effect snow has really hit us hard this year. So I've got my work cut out for me digging in here with these decidedly subpar shovels. Thankfully, there are so many standing dead hardwood trees. I'm not going to have any trouble finding firewood for tonight. I've been at it about 2 hours almost. The light is getting low. It's almost 6. There's another bald eagle. I've got a good amount of wood here, but I'm going to need more. But I'm going to grab something to drink and make a shift to getting the shelter ready. I've got a bunch more sort of pathways to a lot of wood. There's no shortage of standing dead hardwood in this area, which is great. But I'm going to shift to getting the shelter ready and then getting sort of a fire started, and then I'll be able to just in the dark go get more wood whenever I need it. But boy, it's a lot of work. I'm just riding that line between being cold and being wet. So I'm a little bit chilly right now, but it's better than being sweaty. So. Yeah, walking through the forest in winter, it can be about 3 times as taxing or as energy consuming as traipsing through the same bush in any other season. Once you have these well-traveled trails to the spots that you know have the trees that you took down, it's not as hard, but it's still taxing. This is great, not for the tree necessarily, but for me, because I hate to take down fresh balsam fir boughs, you know, when I don't really need to be here doing this. This is more for practice than anything. But this tree recently got knocked over and the boughs are still relatively green. So I'm going to go ahead and take all these boughs and use them for roofing and for bedding for my shelter. And that's a big win. The idea is to put some sticks across here and then thatch it, and then basically build a fire in and amongst those rocks. That's the plan as it stands, man. So I've completely abandoned the idea of a roof. I just don't think it's necessary. So I'm not going to go through all the heartache of making a roof for this shelter. I'm just going to build it around it in snow to keep the wind out. I'm really sheltered under here, so I'm going to keep my fire small. I'll just build myself in with snow, and I think that's going to be insulating enough. I'm not going to need a roof over my head. So now I'm just working on building a fire. All right, so I've got this little fire going and it's already throwing a fair bit of heat off of these rocks. I'm not going to make it very big. I'm going to make my shelter small so that the heat of a small fire will kind of keep me warm. It's burning kind of hot right now, but eventually, once I get the hardwood on, it's going to be less sparky and it's just going to be coals for the most part, and I'm just going to feed long logs in. And I'm going to build a snow barrier from the wind that's coming in off of the front edge of the precipice upon which I've camped. I'm going to have to be pretty careful when I'm stepping in the dark because it's about 100-foot direct straight drop down right here in front of me. I didn't bring a shovel. I've got 2 shovels attached to my feet, which are snowshoes. So they're not nearly as efficient. There's a reason they make shovels and snowshoes, because they're each good at a thing and neither at both. It's going to take a little bit of doing, but I've got nothing else on my agenda tonight. I'm slowly migrating it to the corner here where it can kind of be 270 degrees of heat reflection back at me. But I have noticed that the downside of building against a rock wall with my fire is up top. There's some snow on top of the ridge here that's actually starting to kind of melt, and you'll see there's a fair bit of sort of water coming down. Now I don't think it's going to affect the fire in any way just because the fire is raging well enough, but there's just like little streams of water coming down this. There's something primal about humans and fire. As you can see by my breath, the cold is back, which is good. It's kind of what I was anticipating. But that means I've got to get some food in me. It's getting late, and I brought a steak, so I've got a nice bed of coals. I'm just going to cook the steak right on that. And I have this beautiful view of my fair city of Sault Ste. Marie from the top of the mountain here. Literally, not figuratively. I'm not atop any figurative mountains. I'm just going to lay it right here on these coals. It won't take long. I'm a medium rare guy, so I'm just going to take like maybe a minute on either side, and then hopefully that's cooked. There's something about just being 100% present in the moment when you're outside in the wintertime. Everything is a choice, and there's consequences to your choices. And so you've got to sort of focus everything. There's not a lot of time or room for thinking of, the future or the past or the mundanities of life that we get caught up in so much. and everything is kind of like right now, everything is immediate and in the moment. And that's probably my favorite part about being in the wilderness. And there you have it, friends. It's just got a little bit of wood still attached to it, but I am sure it is going to be a beautiful, beautiful steak. Just a little bit red on the inside. I didn't bring a plate or any utensils. The only thing that's actually true and happening and actually taking place all the time is the present moment. And I tend to forget that all too often. Even coming here, stressing about things that were going to happen in the future and not just actually being right here and actually just enjoying that I'm here on a mountain overlooking my beautiful city where I live and just being present. Ouch. You have to be careful that you don't leave any of the burning pieces of wood on your piece of meat, because what happens is you ingest that piece of wood and it burns the heck out of your face. Well, that was a delightful meal. And now I've got a bit more work to do. I've got to continue processing wood, of course. And I've got to dig out the rest of my shelter. I've got to just remain in the present and not worry too much about the things that are going on in my head in the future. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I got to wash down that lovely steak with a ice cold, like literally I just pulled it out of the ice, India Pale Ale from our friends at Northern Superior Brewing. This was made especially for this type of a situation by our good friend Blake Winter. So cheers, guys. If it weren't nighttime, I could see Gitche Gumee, which is Lake Superior, from here. So I'll just have to taste it. Just brings me back to my point of being present, remembering where you are and what you're doing. All right. I've got everything kind of lined up here, waiting to be just kind of pushed into the fire when the time comes. At this point, I'm going to be starting to bed down and get ready for sleeping, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up on sort of why this. You will have seen, if you follow the channel, we have recently done a hike or a snowshoe along the Voyageur Trail here locally, and we actually ended up sort of taking a bit more time than we thought we would take, and then at the end of our hike the trail actually deviates. Really? Like, really? It's probably fine, but like, really? Anyway, that hike took longer than we thought, and we almost didn't make it out before nightfall. I wanted to practice camping in winter with minimal gear to know that I could if needed. Turns out I only really needed the saw and Bic lighter for this one. Well, it's getting pretty late, friends. I built myself a little bed of boughs here. I'm just going to put on my shell layer so that if it does snow or whatever tonight, I'm sheltered that way from any sort of wetness that comes in. But it's very, very cozy here by the fire. dry stuff off. So I have significantly layered up and I'm ready for sleeping. The wind has definitely increased and the temperature has dropped. It's probably about -5, -6 Celsius. Well, pals, it's about 5:30 in the morning. It's a proper snowstorm and now I can't get back to sleep. I'm gonna head out. It's just about sun up now, so I'm gonna head back to the car. It's about a 45-minute hike out on a trail that I've recently broken. I should be able to follow it pretty easily, even in the low light. I think I got a couple hours of sleep. I can still remember why Cher and I don't love to camp in the wintertime.